Technology, Ethics, and Society, Final Project by Jeff Faretra. A presentation submitted to Professor Scott Wagner in partial fulfillment of the requirements for EDTC 5900 at Webster University. Hello, I am Jeff Faretra. I am from Goose Creek, South Carolina. Professionally, I work for EDTC as a production system instructor supporting the Boeing project. I'm married to Kathy, and we are big Gamecock football fans. In our free time, we attend games and tailgate with our friends. I'm retired from the United States Air Force, in which I served for 26 years. I feel that my ethical and moral feelings, beliefs, and reasonings stem from my time in the Air Force. Even in retirement, I still make attempt to follow the core values of integrity first, service before self, and excellence in all we do. For my final project, I was challenged with creating a topic related to digital technology, educational technology, or electronic technology. For my project, I will examine the theses. In today's global and technologically advanced society, should access to the Internet be viewed as a human right or a privilege? Today, the Internet is required for almost everything. I enlisted in the Air Force immediately after graduation from high school, and when I retired, it was the first time that I really had to apply for employment. I learned that most jobs I was considering required Internet access to apply. The jobs section in the Sunday paper is not what it used to be. If you want to look for a job today, you need access to job posting websites like Monster or Indeed.com. Oftentimes, potential employers require you to create an account on their website, complete online questionnaires, and digitally sign documents, all steps that require technology and the Internet. Each day, we see more banking done online. The last vehicle I purchased, I applied and was approved for a loan, all on my cell phone in just under 15 minutes. The bank I use, USAA, has limited physical locations. When I want to deposit a check, I just photograph the front and back with the application, and within seconds, the funds are in my account. In the educational framework, we see a steady move to technology and online-based education. Most major colleges offer at least one online degree program. For example, the very course that I'm completing this assignment for is 100% online. In addition to colleges, our public schools are moving more towards including technology in the curriculum, which requires our children to have access to the Internet after school hours. Looking at all of this, I wonder, has the Internet become so ingrained in our lives that we can't live without access? Can we function in our daily lives without access to the Internet? Has the need to access the Internet become a human right? I have identified 3 goals for this presentation. The first is to enlighten you. We need to think of technology as a means. We often look at technology as something alien in our lives until we take it away. Second, I want to inform. I have selected multiple sources for information. Some argue that access is a human right and others argue against. I don't believe or desire to change your mind in one 15-minute presentation, but I hope to inform you by providing facts. My final goal is to educate. If you, the viewer, learn one thing from this presentation, I will consider my time well spent. Education does not mean changing one's opinion, but providing them the tools to make a sound opinion for themselves. I will start this presentation by detailing what I think the difference between an open and a closed Internet is. This flowchart shows how each of them affect the free flow of information. On the left is an open Internet where we see opinions, business prospering, and a reduction in the digital divide. On the right side is a closed Internet where we see suppression, digital bubbles, and an increase in the digital divide. What is an open Internet? I define an open Internet as the idea in which information across the World Wide Web is free and available to all, without conditions such as financial motives, government censorship, or restricted access. An open Internet includes access to equipment. Equipment is required to access the Internet, and being able to afford the equipment is crucial. Access to content. An open Internet provides access to all content. Cooperation. Countries work together sharing information and access. This includes business and consumers having the ability to buy and sell goods across international lines. The open internet is a place for democratic deliberation. The internet provides a place that people can share opinions, and reporters have the ability to share newsworthy events. How are global communications affected by an open internet? With an open internet, people have access to information. They know what is happening throughout the world. They are afforded the opportunity to view news, listen to music, and watch video that enlightens, informs, or educates them on events. Using these outlets, people are able to form thoughts and opinions that are factual and sound. People are able to make informed decisions, and as we've seen during events like natural disasters, people are willing to help their fellow man. With technology, people have the ability to create their own content and share it with the world via the internet. This content, be it music, writing, or video, is an exercise of the most basic of human rights: freedom of expression, thought, and opinion. When we provide access to information, the world becomes an open and smaller place. When we have an open internet, we can easily exchange ideas. Internet users have the ability to search for information on simple things like recipes from India to peer-reviewed documents for research from Oxford University. A simple YouTube video can go viral in a matter of hours to motivate a protest or support an organization. People are not persecuted for their opinion. We are able to speak and write without fear. Information is not censored. To clarify, it is not illegal information that I speak of. Things like child pornography, human trafficking, or selling an individual's personal data do not have any place on the internet. The information I speak of includes access to libraries, the BBC, CNN, Fox News, online shopping, and social media. When information is not censored, people have access to multiple sources of information. As mentioned, having access to multiple sources of information allows people to make informed choices. The image on the left, created by Karna Botnet, shows the relative average utilization of IPv4 addresses observed using ICMP ping requests over a 24-hour period. Notice the brightness of some areas and complete darkness in others. A closed internet does not allow or limits access to the majority of a country's society. These limits come as a result of pricing devices, equipment, and access to a point that only the highest class can afford them. Access can also be restricted by a country's government, a service provider, or a technology company. When researching for this project, I noticed that countries with limited or no internet oftentimes do not have access to the equipment. When they do have access to the equipment, they may not be able to use the equipment. One example is some countries in Africa. While many have mobile devices, they don't have access to electricity to keep them charged. Access to content. Many countries restrict access to content they feel impedes or defames the government or websites that they may consider morally objectionable. Along with censorship comes government surveillance. During my travels to the Middle East, Eastern Bloc countries, and Asia, I was warned countless times by the Air Force intelligence offices to watch what and where I went on the internet because of surveillance. I was informed that when someone tries to access a blocked website, triggers are activated. This could result in something as mild as my computer being accessed without my authorization or arrest. How are global communications affected by a closed internet? Hillary Clinton used the analogy of placing people in digital bubbles. When access to the internet is limited or non-existent, societies are placed in these digital bubbles, unaware of what is available outside of their area. Because the internet is closed, there is limited opportunity to view news, listen to music, watch video that enlightens, informs, or educates them of events. Without these outlets, people are unable to form thoughts and opinions that are factual or sound. The basic human rights of freedom of expression, thought, and opinion are often violated in countries that have a closed internet. One example is illustrated in the photo. These two French reporters and their accompanying editors finished a report in Afghanistan for a French 3 magazine. On the 30th of December 2009, they were taken hostage by a group of Taliban forces in Kapsi. Throughout their captivity, attempts were made to rescue them, but they were deemed too dangerous. On June 29, 2011, after 547 days of captivity, they were released. Effect on the free flow of information. When we have a closed internet, we cannot exchange ideas. Internet users lack the ability to search for information even on the simplest of things. People are persecuted for their opinion, and they are unable to speak or write without fear. For example, our two French reporters. Access to major news sources, major magazines, online shopping, and social media are restricted. I encountered this censorship firsthand while traveling in the state of Kuwait. One evening, I tried to access Rolling Stone magazine using the wireless provided by my hotel, but found the website was blocked because it was considered morally objectionable. When information is censored, people are forced to make choices with limited information. This limited information can have negative effects on democracy, something we see happen with the people of North Korea daily. This map illustrates most of the major countries around the world, and if they have an open, free, mostly open, or closed, not free internet. Some examples of countries with an open internet include the United States, the United Kingdom, Germany, and Japan. Countries with a closed internet include Iran, North Korea, China, and Syria. Next, we will examine good state and bad state actors. This diagram shows the effect both have on the free flow of information. First, we will look at good state actors like the United States and the United Kingdom. Then we will move to bad state actors like North Korea and Iran. What is a good state actor? I define a good state actor as actors that are inclusive with their global society. They support private enterprise and global business, and they are advocates for human rights, and they embrace social development. Some attributes of good state actors include global communications. The society on a whole has the ability to speak, listen, and learn on a global level. Cooperation. Because they are connected on a global level, they seek out cooperation between themselves and others. Cooperation includes areas like natural and social sciences, financial, and even militaries. However, the open internet has downfalls. There's privacy of digital media. There's crime. And there's mass data and privacy violations. Good state actors reduce the digital divide between those with and without access to the internet. What is the effect on the digital divide? With the majority of people having access to equipment and the internet, the digital divide is reduced. People have access to any and all information that they need, sometimes to the point of information overload. Because they have access to social media outlets like Facebook, Twitter, and Skype, they are able to communicate on a global level. This holds true for business as well. We see even small, local businesses buy and sell within the global economy. One example is Etsy.com. Etsy is a virtual marketplace that allows members to sell items from their homes to anyone in the world. They rely on an open internet to support their mission, which is to build a human, authentic, and community-centric global and local marketplace. What is a bad state actor? I define a bad state actor as selective with their global community. They suppress private enterprise and business. They may violate the most basic of human rights to include freedom of speech, and they impede social development. Some of the attributes that distinguish a bad state actor include government suppression. This includes public communication considered objectionable, exercise of authority in an unjust manner, or intolerance of another's religious beliefs. Government control. There is some type of governmental control throughout the world. In the United States, until recently, we had the net neutrality laws which prevented service providers from speeding up or slowing down certain websites. In other countries, this control can be based on a caste system and the threat of imprisonment or death for violations that seem minor to other societies. As a result of governmental suppression and control, most of these societies are disconnected from the global society. There is a digital divide between those that have access to the internet and those that don't, as well as a digital divide between the countries on a whole and the rest of the world. What is the effect on the digital divide? In many of these countries, access to equipment is limited by the government. This includes pricing equipment to the point it is unaffordable by the masses to not allowing the sale of equipment. Access to the internet and information is also limited by the government. As we have discussed, censorship and website blocking takes place in many of these countries. In countries like Iran and North Korea, we find government-controlled media. This government-controlled media includes internet, radio, and television. With this type of media, members of society are only seeing the news and events that the leaders of the country have deemed appropriate. The downfall to this is a disconnect from the global community. Many of us have seen and heard stories about families that have been separated between Cuba and the United States and have not been able to speak to each other in a decade or more. This should be impossible with today's social media outlets, but countries ban, block, or suppress to ensure or maintain control. These actions have a negative effect on businesses in these areas. While I can easily shop for products in South Korea, the United Kingdom, and France, I am very limited on shopping countries like Iran or Cuba. This control affects the people that own the business and hinders or even prevents them from moving up economically. Opinions. Hillary Clinton. As the United States Secretary of State, Ms. Clinton was an advocate for an open internet. She noted that the internet is not exhaustible and an individual's use does not affect anyone else. Her feelings on a global community centered around the idea that more people that contribute the ideas, the more valuable the network becomes. And her analysis on business and the internet were correct. It is almost impossible to find a business today that does not depend on the internet and does not suffer when networks are constrained. Daniel Joyce. Mr. Joyce believes that the internet is an avenue of global communications. He pointed out that many may view the internet not as a place of democratic deliberation, but a place of fragmentation and crime. However, he called the internet a great equalizer. The United Nations. On the 16th of May 2011, the United Nations Human Rights Council declared access to the internet is a human right. They noted that the internet has become a key means by which individuals can exercise their right to freedom of opinion and expression. They cited the contrast within the digital divide with statistics based on developed states and undeveloped states. The United Nations found that there were 71.6 internet users per 100 inhabitants in developed states, with only 9.6 users per 100 inhabitants in areas like the African region. Michael O'Reilly. Contrary to the United Nations, Mr. O'Reilly, as chairman of the Federal Communications Commission, declared that access to the internet is not a human right. He noted that the internet access is not a necessity in the day-to-day lives of Americans and doesn't even come close to the threshold to be considered a basic human right. He continued to say that the term necessity should be reserved for those items that humans cannot live without, such as food, shelter, and water. He feels that human rights are standards of behavior that are inherent in every human being. These include liberty, due process or justice, and the freedom of religious beliefs. Jennifer Winter. Ms. Winter summarized the topic well. She stated the internet offers immense promise for grassroots engagement of citizens and authentic democratic governance. However, it is vital to acknowledge that the internet communication technologies are not the cause of human rights, but rather powerful enablers. Before I provide my opinion, I want to restate my theses. In today's global and technologically advanced society, should access to the internet be viewed as a human right or a privilege? After doing research, soul searching, and completing this project, I feel while the internet is a valuable tool, access is not a human right, but a privilege. It is possible to live without access to the internet. Looking at the evolution of man and using the basic principle that we have existed for approximately 200,000 years, and further realizing that the internet has really only existed since 1990, we see that humans have lived substantially longer, about 199,973 years, give or take, without the internet. When we look at our society, we see two examples of things that fall in line with the internet but are not considered human rights. The car. Cars enable us to easily move from point A to point B, but it is not a human right to own a car. It is a privilege. The telephone. A telephone is a helpful tool, but not a basic necessity within the scope of our lives. Accessing the internet is a commodity, and providing that access is expensive, time-consuming, and extensive. Internet service providers spend large amounts of money to launch satellites, build an infrastructure, and train employees. This is something that the majority of our population cannot do. If these companies were required to provide free internet access, they would cease doing business, and the internet in itself would not exist. Looking at the diagram, we see a lot of good when we have an open internet that is free, but we have to realize that the internet is just a technology that we use to enable our rights. Vinton Cerf of the New York Times stated that the internet is a means to an end, but not an end itself. It is one of many tools available to our society. While it is faster, easier, and has vast outreach capabilities, it is still one piece of equipment. Human rights are things that are bestowed upon us by a higher power. Freedom of thought, freedom of opinion, freedom of speech, freedom of conscience, and freedom to access of information. While all of these can be exercised on the internet is not required to exercise them, and therefore is not a human right, but truly a privilege. The remaining 2 slides are the references used to complete this presentation.